everyone, and welcome to the Riverfront Red Show, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. This is episode number 535 of the world's most dangerous podcast, where we will discuss, you guessed it, the Cincinnati Reds, and specifically an ugly week of baseball, and whether or not there's help to come in Louisville. With me this week is no one. We are mixing things up a little bit this week. You know, life kind of got in the way. I am moving halfway across the country in a few days, and Chad is in danger of breaking down in tears as an adult man if he has to talk about this team right now, or maybe he just had to travel for work. It's one of those two things. I don't know. But either way, we're coming at you with, just my thoughts on what's been going on. But more importantly, after I am done with my inane rants tonight, stay tuned because our very own Tim Daniel, host of Late Night Reds and frequent contributor here, had the fantastic fortune to sit down with Nick Curran. I apologize, Nick, if I mispronounced that. The broadcasting director and play-by-play voice of the Louisville Bats. They chatted, because of how bad the offense has been lately. We needed to see if there is anyone down on that Louisville roster that might be able to help out this big league club. So after y'all let me rant for a bit, please stay tuned. Listen to an absolutely terrific conversation between Tim and Nick. And before we get into anything further, go give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe. Do all of those things. We'd appreciate it. It helps the podcast grow. That's what we're trying to do here. Get more Reds content to the masses. That's a huge shout out to the Patreon family. I'm telling you, these people make it all worthwhile because it's been tough this last 7 days or so. And those guys make it worthwhile. We're having a good time in the chats either way, and could not do it without the support there. Would love to have you join the family by heading on over to patreon.com/riverfrontcincy or clicking the link in the show notes. All right, y'all, let's get into this. It's no secret. Things have been bad. They have been bleak. The Fellas are currently on an 8-game losing streak and are now, as of reporting, exactly 1/2 game back of last place in the National League Central. They have dropped to 16-21 and haven't won a game since the last time we recorded an episode. That really makes doing the game recaps that we usually do pretty depressing. So we're just going to skip that and kind of dive right into the bad, the good, and what might come next. So let's just start with the bad, because there's been a lot more of it. The offense has been abysmal. The team slash line is a 209, 288, a 354 slugging percentage. Dear God, that is awful. It's been even worse during the losing streak. A 148 batting average, a 212 on base percentage, and a 230 slugging percentage. That is good for a 24. You heard that right. 24 weighted runs created plus. That's 76% worse than a team full of league average baseball players. But hey, that's no surprise. You've been watching the games. We all have. But that's what the eye test shows. They are dead last in Major League Baseball in batting average. They are 28 out of 30 teams in on-base percentage, 26 out of 30 in slugging. And any way you slice it, any way you want to carve up stats and splits, it's all bad. It's absurdly bad. So let's run through some of the familiar names. We'll start with Spencer Steer. I barely even put Spencer Steer in the bad column, but I did just because my guy is getting unlucky. He's on the hottest cold streak I've ever seen. Mostly great at bats, a lot of really, really unlucky line drives. He's hitting the ball 7.5% harder than league average. He's hitting a higher percentage of line drives than league average. They're just finding gloves. So while it's not been great lately, let's not worry too much about Spence. That looks going to turn around closer to what it was at the beginning of the season. Christian Encarnacion strain, CES. He's injured now, and he was hitting terribly before landing on the IL in what can only be described as a truly confounding series of events and medical updates. A little bit more on that in a bit, I guess. But CES right now is hitting 190, so below the Mendoza, a 220 on base percentage, and a 293 slugging percentage, a 45 OPS plus. all the guy's ever done his entire career is hit. He did it last year at Cincinnati. He did it every step of the way in the minor leagues. I don't know what's going on. I have no clue what to make of it. I don't know whether this is a legit injury or if it's a phantom IL stint. We've seen those before, but we know that he is better than that. The club has to have him get it right if they're going to turn this ship around. He's just too good of a hitter, and these bats have been uncompetitive. We've been watching that day in and day out. He looks clueless up there for the first time that I can recall probably in his entire life. So keep waiting for it to make sense. Hopefully whatever he is on this IL stint for takes care of it, and he comes back swinging the bat the way we're used to. Next up, Jeimer Candelario, the big offensive free agent signing that no one asked for. You know what? As bad as he's been so far, and it's been on both sides of the diamond, the defense has been pretty rough too. Jeimer is showing some signs of life at the plate lately, so I'm not going to jinx it by dragging him too hard here. But let's just say there's a real reason that we all wanted the Reds to go out and sign a big right-handed bat, a real slugger, not a usually most of the time above average journeyman. Jonathan India. India's just India at this point. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I think he just is what he is. He's sporting a 214 batting average, 326 on base, and a 308 slugging percentage. And guys, I'm sorry if I have to break some news here. Rookie of the Year, Jonathan India, probably just isn't coming back. Now, we know he pays attention to the media sometimes. And Jonathan, please go prove me wrong. But it's not been great anymore from our quote-unquote captain. Nick Martini and Bubba Thompson are gone. This is actually only in the bad column because it took Nick Krall 3 weeks too long to make the decision that we all knew was necessary. I'm not sure what exactly changed over the last 3 days to open Nick's eyes, but I'll take it. Those guys were horrendous, and serious professional baseball clubs don't have guys like that on their roster. Not when you're trying to contend for a division title. Either way, they're gone. I'll take it. Replacing them, the immortal Mike Ford and Connor Capel. Welcome to Cincinnati, guys. We're rooting like hell for you, but unfortunately, I don't see them being saviors. But hey, I guess it can't be worse than that dirty martini with a splash of Bubba that we've been force-fed for the last month. So rooting for those two. This one hurts a little bit. Will Benson has been awful. He's been so bad. He's batting below 200. Just another guy hitting below the Mendoza. He's striking out in nearly half of his plate appearances. He just looks lost in the box. Man, you absolutely hate to see it. He's such a fun guy to root for. And when he is going, it really seems like the rest of the club responds. So here's hoping he figures it out. But it has been bad so far. Another guy who just looks lost. Let's touch on the bullpen a little bit. Once considered a strength, it's really been struggling. It's 26th in Major League Baseball out of 30 teams in FIP. That's fielding independent pitching. It's sort of like a metric that neutralizes things only pitchers can control. So that's not good. Alexis Diaz has not looked right. In fact, he's looked super wrong, especially of late. Emilio Pagan appears to so far be a horrendous misuse of financial resources. And you know what? Who would have thought that a fly ball pitcher would struggle in Great American Ballpark? Crazy. I know. Lucas Sims, he's just been bad. Justin Wilson's been bad. And our best reliever is currently hanging out in AAA for reasons. I'm not terribly concerned. Bullpens are volatile, but it hasn't been great lately. Lastly, the fundamentals, man. The fundamentals have been atrocious. The defense, the base running, it's all ugly. The Reds are currently 26th in Major League Baseball in defensive rating and 28th in outs above average. And of course, that is what the eye test says as well. So if you're looking at blaming somebody, if you want to get mad at David Bell, and I'm not sure you should or shouldn't, we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. It seems like his teams have always been bad defensively. A lot of that's going to be on the players, but eventually coaching comes into play. All right, enough of the bad. Let's talk about the good. First off, TJ Friedel is back, baby. So happy to see TJ back in the lineup. He has looked a lot like his old self. And there was one day there, his very first day back, where the lineup actually resembled a real major league lineup. That was nice. That was a great day. Now, the lineup didn't perform, as we all know, but hey, it's great to see him back. holding down center field, working at the top of the lineup. Welcome back, TJ. Great to see you. Our boy, the alien electric Ellie De La Cruz, he's come back down to earth a little bit, but it's going to be like that sometimes. He's still incredible, and he alone is worth tuning into this slot fest night in and night out. So keep watching Ellie. Tyler Stevenson, he's been one of the few bright spots so far. Unfortunately, bright in this instance is like when the dimmer switch only goes about halfway up. It's bright by comparison. Still, he has been an above-average hitter, and this is after a very, very slow start, and has maintained that defensive improvement and pitch framing improvement that we wanted so very much. So you love to see it. Keep it up, Tyler Stevenson, and you might still get to date my daughter. Lastly, starting pitching. Should probably go on for longer about this. Maybe we'll do more later on. But the starting pitching has been excellent. Frankie Montas is back and looking even better than he did before he left. Fastball touching 98, 99 in his comeback start. So that was some numbers he was hitting when he was in Oakland and not since. So you love seeing that. The starters are looking at a 3.72 team ERA, which includes some kind of rough Nick Martinez starts. But it's been pretty great top to bottom. This was before today's start, so these numbers haven't updated. When Hunter was okay. He was not super good. Had some control problems today, but going into that, he was looking at a 1.37 ERA plus. Even better, the advanced stuff's even better. Love a 1.165 WHIP for him. Graham Ashcraft 1.11 ERA plus, and remember 100 is league average. So anything above that, you're feeling pretty good about. Andrew Abbott 1.29 ERA plus. Nick Lodolo has been mostly incredible at 1.54 ERA plus, and that Frankie Montas I was talking about at 1.21. So these guys have been doing a fantastic job. The offense just hasn't picked them up. The Bats have just let them down. When you get started pitching like that, which, we talked about starting pitching depth being a real strength of this team. I'm not sure we expected it to be quite this good. And to be honest, the depth has not been there. Brandon Williamson just got moved to the 60-day DL, IL, whatever they're calling it these days. Connor Phillips and Chase Petty have been pretty bad in AAA. I don't know what to tell you, except the guys that we do have been healthy, and they have been fantastic. So what comes next? Guys, gals, I'm sorry. I have no clue. But it seems to me like some sort of shakeup is probably necessary. I'm kind of getting shades of that 2022 Philadelphia Phillies squad who fired Joe Girardi at the beginning of June and immediately lit a fire under their butts. And they rode that fire, that wave, all the way to the World Series. Sadly, our captain David Bell signed a 2-year extension. I believe it's 2-year. Don't quote me on that. He signed an extension last season. And the Castellanis are not likely, based on the evidence we have seen, to pay him to sit at home while paying someone else to manage the ball club. And let's be honest, I don't even know if that's going to make any difference whatsoever. I don't know the clubhouse dynamics. I don't love how every day he runs out and says that the guys are good, the guys are great. Seems like they're having a blast. I know he's not going to drag his guys in public. I don't think he should. But it would be really nice to hear him take some accountability. Just say, hey, we stink right now. There's a lot of things that we're doing wrong. Here's how we're going to try to fix it. We gave him so much credit last season when the team was overperforming, as much as this show hated to do that. We have to show the same level of accountability when it's not working out as well. So let's stay tuned to see if anything happens there. I wouldn't put money on it. Does Joel McKeithen, the hitting coach, does he become the scapegoat? It's certainly hard to argue that he's been doing a good job. Is the front office alive? Are they aware that there are other teams in Major League Baseball with whom you can do business and try to acquire Major League talent? I'm not so sure. Is Nick Curran going to do anything about this team and its ever dwindling postseason chances? Again, wouldn't put money on it. But this is exactly why such a loud contingent of Reds fans wanted them to take advantage of being in first place at the All-Star break last year and firmly in playoff position at the trade deadline last year. Instead, we got one reliever who, despite having the best numbers of anyone else in this bullpen, is just hanging out in AAA for options reasons, because he has options and other guys don't have options. Seems like he should construct a roster where you don't have to send down your best relievers, because you don't want to lose the Buck Farmers and Lucas Sims and Justin Wilsons of the world. Justin Wilson, who I think was a great signing, but is only on this roster because Alex Young got hurt. You can't afford to lose that guy. And instead, you have to send Sam Mole, who pulled up real quick, has the stats aren't here. Here you go, 276 fielding independent pitching so far this season. Don't get it. Don't know why that happened. Let's see. That's about it for me. You're promised nothing in this league. Guys get hurt. Guys regress. You have these sophomore slumps. You have to make adjustments. It's the cat and mouse game they're going to play for their whole career. It's just harder when you're young. If you have a chance to make the postseason, I really think you need to take it. You can disagree with me if you want, and you can argue they should hoard all the prospects that they have. Go check out the untouchable Connor Phillips' numbers in AAA so far, by the way. I challenge you. But me, I'm tired of waiting for this shit to turn around. It's been going in mostly the wrong direction my entire life. Getting a little old. And of course, it's a little emotional right now because they're on this 8-game losing streak. I don't think this team is as bad as it's been playing. It's difficult for a major league team to be as bad as this offense has looked. Good hitters simply are not hitting. It's weird. It's unfortunate. It's confusing. I don't think this season is over by a long stretch, but after losing 8 in a row, they need to get it right. They need to get it right soon. The schedule doesn't get any easier the rest of this month. All right, one last thing. And this is a little tongue-in-cheek, but at least I hope so. What I know is, ever since David Bell did Joseph Daniel Votto dirty by barely playing him in his last series as a Red, and since in this podcast host's so humble of opinions, the front office did him dirty by not either picking up his option, they had the money, or negotiating a new deal with him. And he said he would have taken the same minor league deal he took from Toronto. So don't talk to me about an inability to afford him. Since then, it's been a whole lot of bad luck for our beloved Redlegs. Emphasis on beloved, because that's what they are. We do love this team. That's why I'm here right now. And that's why y'all are listening. But if the fellas don't figure it out soon and we ride the positivity wave from last season into another just moribund lost season as Reds fans, I'm afraid we might be looking at the real worst case scenario. And that is that the curse of Votto is legit. Surely not, right? Stay tuned to find out. All right, let's get to some viewer mail questions before handing this thing over to Tim and Louisville Bats play-by-play maestro Nick Curran. First up, Rex Scott. He says, I realize that my reputation on our Slack channel, and real quick, these are, as always, messages, emails from our friends over at patreon.com/riverfrontcincy. You want to ask questions to the show? Go join the family for as little as $2 a month, or as much as you want to give. We'll take it. We'll find a way. Rex says, I realize that my reputation is being a cockeyed optimist, but I'm just not worried about this losing streak. Teams can have wholesale hitting slumps. Our pitching has been pretty insert your Larry David voice here. Sorry, Rex. I'll work on that, but great reference. Pitching has been pretty decent, pretty good during this time. We also know how many stellar hitters we have on this team. My only concern is that we may be a streaky team and not a consistent one. Am I wrong? And if so, why? Also, wasn't Curb Your Enthusiasm better than Seinfeld? For the last question, that's a hot take. I'm not sure how hot. Both fantastic shows. I personally have Seinfeld ranked a little higher, but I need to go on a Curb rewatch, and we can we can readjust those rankings if necessary. Rex, your first question, I don't think you're wrong. I think you're super right. I think that being streaky can be expected with the hitting profiles of a lot of the guys on this team. I also think it can be a common characteristic in young teams. I hope that we start seeing some of the hot streaks instead of prolonged poor hitting streaks. Another 12-game win streak last season would cure everything that ails us. But you may be onto something there, Rex. I think that this team can get consistent, but maybe this year's not the year to expect it. Next question comes from Hooper Powell. Now that we have our center fielder back, what do you think about playing CES in one of the outfield spots in Louisville until he comes back? You know, I harped on this a lot in the offseason. He's such an athletic guy that I thought that he could sort of be that right-handed outfield bat, the solution that we knew we needed. I'll say a few things. One, the athleticism is definitely there. He has played a fantastic defensive first base, so much so that I'm not sure that you want to go away from that. You might not want to miss that. But it doesn't really matter if he can play an adequate defensive outfield if he doesn't figure out the bat. So I wouldn't throw too much at him. Get him down in AAA when he comes, if he goes and does rehab stint down there, whatever it is, and let him figure out the bat, because that's the thing. If he's not hitting, he doesn't have a spot on this roster. And we know he can hit. We're confident that he will hit. So figure out the bat first. If they have some time, sure, get some reps out there. But the way he was playing at first base, I'm not too worried about that. Seth Shaner asks, why does it rain every time I try to mow the yard? I would argue that you are specifically trying to mow the yard when the forecast says it's going to rain, so you don't have to do it. But eventually, you're going to have to get out there. The wife's going to make you sad. So just do it when the sun's out. Also, why can't the Reds hit, buddy? If any of us know the answer to that question, text David Bell and Joel McKeithen immediately. I will say that one thing that has bothered me a lot is plate discipline. When this team was winning games, they were seeing a lot of pitches, getting to bullpens early, taking a lot of walks, and it has been the exact opposite. I'm going to look up some stats on that and come on next time we talk. But they are swinging early, missing good pitches, and letting starters go deep in games, taking journeymen, making them look like perennial Cy Young Award winners. It's gross. Our last question comes from Jordan Salisbury. Hello, gentlemen. I'm very concerned and frustrated with the overall incompetence of the Reds medical staff. This whole scenario with CES now and the missed fracture on the radiography. And if I remember correctly, they couldn't diagnose the labrum tear on Matt McLean as well. His tear was only noticed on a second opinion at UCLA. I work in medical device and orthopedics/neuro, and it seems like our medical staff is just missing a lot on our players. And this is just compounding further health issues. Jordan, there's a lot of speculation about this. If you remember, Jonathan India came out and said it. He was furious with the Reds medical staff for giving him the clean bill of health when he wasn't ready. And he missed extensive time because of that, more than he probably would have had to. This has been a complaint Reds fans have had for years. I don't know if there is any merit to it. I don't know if other fans of teams feel the exact same or if it is unique to us. I suspect that it's not. But something's weird. The CES thing sure seemed funny. He got MRIs. They said he was fine. And then they come back and say, oh, nope. There was an old fracture. It was a fracture wall that we didn't know about, which seems odd, but I'm no doctor, also working in medical sales. But I don't know, man. The story out of this last one was that they gave him another scan and discovered a new fracture. And some people balked at that. I did see someone who said they were a doctor on Twitter, which, that's not the most reliable thing you've ever heard. He said that there are scenarios where it would only show up in imaging after the old bone started healing back. Don't quote me on that. I have no clue. But if that's the case, okay, we'll take it. But also, if there were fractures and they could have caught it, we wouldn't have been playing a man down for 10 days. It would explain why CES is so bad. You're right. The McLean thing, re-injured some stuff that they thought was healed. It seems odd. I don't have a good answer other than to say I hope they're looking at this closely. I hope they're monitoring it, because if there is some sort of actual systemic issue, then yeah, they should fix that. It's in their best interest to fix it. These players are assets to the team. If they're playing well, the team's playing well, it makes the team money. They have every single reason to try and fix and get this fixed and make it work. All right. That is going to do it before I head this over to Tim and Nick. So stay tuned. Give it a listen. It's going to be fantastic. Find out if there is reason for optimism, for hope on the way. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this rant of a sad man listening to it, watching an 8-game losing streak. So long.
All right, Tim Daniel here taking over, and joining me is the play-by-play voice for the Louisville Bats. Been with the team now for about 12 years, and director of broadcasting, Nick Curran. Nick, thanks for taking some time to hang out with the Riverfront today, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I actually got to work a Bats game last summer, which was really cool. Got to hang out with you and Jim Couch a little bit for a day, so that was really fun. So I'm anxious to get back down there. I love that stadium. It's always a fun place to check a game out.
We love it. It's aged well. 25th year this year. It opened in 2000, so it has held up pretty well over the years.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful stadium for those who have never been. If you're doing a day in Louisville, that and the Bat Museum are definitely a fantastic baseball day. Nick, before we kind of get into the current Bats organization, the team, tell us a little bit about you. Like I said, you've been with the team now for 12 years, right?
Going on 12. I started in February of 2013, so a little over 11. Started as, the number 2 broadcaster, as kind of an intern working with Matt Andrews, who was here for a long time. He got a job with Ohio State in 2016, which is his alma mater, doing a lot of stuff up there. So took over in the middle of the 2016 season as the lead guy, and have been here. I've been here since. So I am a Louisville native, which is kind of a unique thing in baseball, to be able to work in the same place where you grew up, which is awesome. And I went to Western Kentucky, and good broadcasting school there. And being a radio guy is something I wanted to do pretty much my entire life. So it kind of worked out from there.
Yeah, so you mentioned Louisville. Are you a Louisville Cardinal fan? I know you said you're a Western Kentucky alum.
Yeah, I grew up a U of L fan pretty much my whole life. I do women's basketball for them as well on the radio, which has been an incredible experience. And so definitely grew up a Cards fan from the time I was probably 3 years old. That was kind of ingrained in me, and so that's been in the blood the whole way.
Got to be excited about Pat Kelsey then, right?
Yeah, I think obviously a great connection to Cincinnati with him, and I know he's a big Reds fan as well. But the energy he has brought already to the men's basketball program, and that he's sort of infused into the fan base, has been really remarkable. And I think there were a lot of names thrown around as that search was taking place. And I think at the very beginning, there were people that maybe didn't get as excited about Pat as maybe they were thinking with some of the other names out there. But it took very little time, I think, for him to win everybody over with his energy and his passion. And really from the first words he spoke at the introductory press conference, I think everyone's looking forward to seeing what he can do when the season gets going. The off season's gone really, really well.
Yeah, so I cover Xavier basketball for us as well. I'm credentialed with them, so obviously keeping a close eye on Pat, see what he's doing there. So I'm excited to see how that goes. But people are here to talk about. You hear us talk about the Louisville Bats, obviously. Not as much as we could talk college basketball all day. So you mentioned 2013. You started with the organization. You're a Louisville native, as you said. So was that just kind of like the luck of the draw of the more how you ended up with the Bats, or is that something that you kind of saw, you kind of monitored to see if positions came open?
It's yeah, it's a long, sort of convoluted story. At Western Kentucky, my last semester in college, I did a couple of internships at TV stations here in Louisville while I was in school. My last semester of college, Bellarmine University is now a Division I school here in Louisville. At the time was Division II. Their men's basketball program was starting a radio broadcast. They had been on years before, but hadn't been on for a while. They were coming off one of the best seasons in program history, and they needed somebody to do it, and they wanted someone that would kind of be their first priority and who would work for the money, and that was me. I was still in school, so I got that job during my last semester of college, and then when I graduated, I was a December graduate in 2009. Moved back here and was doing that and some other odds and ends stuff and broadcasting or sports or whatever. My second season with Bellarmine, we were on an ESPN radio affiliate that had just started here in Louisville. So I got to know those folks, ended up starting to work there after a stint working at Toys R Us, which was not recommended for anyone, I would say. But so I was there, and then kind of through that, randomly, I started to do a radio show on Sunday mornings with the guy who at the time was the media relations guy with the Bats. We became good friends. Through him, I got to know Matt Andrews, who was the lead guy here at the time. In 2012, the Bats were 51-93. It was the worst record in franchise history. He was working solo for all those games, and I think it kind of beat him down a little bit, just how rough that season was. And so he was looking for somebody to work with and reached out to me to see if I would be interested. I certainly was. And so that's how I started with the Bats in 13, and then was an intern in 13. Didn't have anything for me at the end of the 13 season, so I interned again in 2014, working with Matt, and then finally got hired full-time going into 15, and then became the lead broadcaster when he left during the 2016 season. So that's kind of how it all worked out.
You mentioned, you probably should not have mentioned Toys R Us to me. I don't know if you can see in my setup here. I have an extensive amount of action figures.
That's right.
Yeah, extensive amount of WWE action figures, precisely. So I definitely have the passion for those. So
don't ever work there. I mean, yeah. I know you can't really work there now, but it was not the best.
Yeah,
the best place to work, I would say.
If I ever moved to Toronto, I guess if I need a job, but
there you go.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit here. So obviously, the big league club has had quite the struggle of late getting base hits and stuff, to put it lightly. Though I was at last night's game where I thought they were going to pull it off in the ninth, and they didn't. But that's neither here nor there. So obviously they've called on a couple reinforcements in the Louisville area. One of them is obviously TJ Friedel, who was there on rehab assignment. I only had him for a couple games before he got called back to the big league club. But did you kind of start to see? I know, I never look at rehab assignment numbers because I don't think they really mean a whole lot. It's how comfortable they look in the box. Are they running the bases? Are they doing the fielding okay? But did you kind of see TJ Friedel as this progression to the few games you had him that was kind of looking like he was kind of ramping up, getting closer and closer to big league ready?
Yeah, for sure. He looked really good from the start. I mean, when most of the time when guys, especially outfielders, are starting a rehab assignment, they might play 3 innings or 5 innings in the field. He started game 1 and played 7 in center, DH the full game the next day, and then went back-to-back playing 9. He looked really good out there, looked very comfortable in the box, hit several balls hard, did have a few doubles over the course of his 4 games, and some others that were really hard-hit balls that didn't work out for hits. So he definitely looked like a guy that wasn't going to be around very long here, and obviously wasn't, and great for him. And everyone's obviously seen what he could do, especially last year, but really even going back 2 years ago when he finally sort of stuck up there. He can be a spark in that lineup, and I think he will be, and I think he's a really, really important piece to have back, and he definitely looked like he was ready to be back up there when he was here.
Yeah, last night looked really good. Had a big hit in the ninth. Got an awesome catch and throw that kept the runner from advancing. So that's definitely things this team needs. Obviously, with those moves, people kind of come up and go. And then one of the interesting ones was the Reds bought the contract of Connor Capel, who you got to kind of see for a couple weeks there. And obviously, like I said, this is a team that's looking for sparks. This is a team looking for guys to kind of get big hits. What did you kind of see from your time with Connor? Do you kind of see where he can maybe carve out a role at the big league club moving forward for the year?
Yeah, I think, he's a guy that's been around a little bit, has some big league time, started the year in Oakland last year. So he's familiar with the big leagues, which I think is an important thing for what they're looking for right now. And he can hit. He's a professional hitter. I know that's an overused term, but he is. I don't think there's any question. He knows what he's doing at the plate, and we saw some power. He was the Bats home run leader when he went up with 7. He reached base in like his first 15 games of the year, which I think is a really good thing. And maybe the most important thing of all, I believe it was Saturday during the Bats last series in St. Paul, he came off the bench in a pinch hit spot in an RBI opportunity and came through with an RBI single. I think that's something that he could probably be doing a lot of. I would guess he will not end up being an everyday player so much, but he's a veteran guy that's probably pretty familiar with being able to come off the bench and knows the routine. And that's always something guys talk about having to adjust to. But I think he knows how to stay ready even when he's not starting. And I think that's going to be something that's really important because I would guess that's probably a role he'll be playing quite a bit up there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like really underrated when it comes to the baseball term for sure. So I really appreciate you brought that up because that is something where, especially the bench bats there have not been doing what they've been hoping, which is par for the course with everybody. It's probably the theme of this interview here. One other name, obviously, who had a lot of weird timeline situations that just got his first at bat for the Reds last night was Mike Ford. And you know what Mike Ford does. You know, he's there to hit bombs. And he's pretty good at hitting bombs at that. But your kind of time with him, I know it was kind of him kind of playing out and had a timeline, but what did you kind of see from Mike there? Obviously, we know now that Christian Encarnacion Strand's hurt, maybe looking like a guy who's going to be maybe to get some spot starts in first base, and kind of see him kind of doing different things around the ball club for sure.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, another veteran guy that's been around, and you kind of know what you're going to get. I know he did talk in spring training, and we saw it a little bit here about not necessarily being home run or bust and trying to spray it around and come up with hits. And we definitely saw that a little bit here. He was hitting for a very high average as he, opted out, and then that whole thing played out. But yeah, I think he brings a lot of good energy to the clubhouse. Saw that firsthand here, which I think can be an underrated thing. I think, something that we kind of saw a couple of times here, instinctually really good. Like he's obviously, you look at him, you look at his numbers, not a base stealer. Stole third base when we were in Iowa a few weeks back, standing up just because the pitcher wasn't paying any attention to him, and took it over and stole third. And then Pat Kelly, after the game, got the groundskeeper to give him the third base bag, and he presented it to Mike in the clubhouse.
That's awesome.
It was a doubleheader. The Bats swept, and it was kind of a cool thing for the team. And I think Ford was really appreciative and is keeping that base and intends to put it in his house, and maybe even have everyone in our clubhouse sign it here. So that's cool. He stole another one later when, again, same thing, somebody just not paying attention takes off, and he can do that. So, those are the types of sort of plays that aren't going to show up in analytics, what they mean, but they bring an energy, I think, to the team that you can't quantify. And I think he's the type of guy that can do that. And obviously is a guy that's going to be really good against right-handed pitching, and is a guy that's going to hit his fair share of home runs, particularly in that ballpark. So, yeah, I think he's a nice addition, especially in a spot where they are with Encarnacion Strand out, and hopefully he's back as soon as possible. But I also think he's a guy that can be okay not playing every day, which is, again, important with what his role may end up being there. So I think those are reasons why you look for veteran guys in those sorts of spots, because they're probably developed a pretty good routine for staying ready, even if they're not necessarily in the lineup on an everyday basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about a couple pitchers real quick before we kind of go into a few more things. Obviously, one of the big names in Reds land as far as like up and comers is Connor Phillips. Had a little bit of time with the Reds at the end of the year last year. So far, numbers have not been anywhere any of us wanted to be. I'm certainly not where he wants to be, I'm sure. What have you kind of seen from him so far? Where do you kind of see, like, have you seen maybe him kind of getting more comfortable on the mound again in his last couple starts? Where do you kind of see maybe how he's kind of progressing through the year? Because I know like everyone's looking at that 8.28 ERA, but that could just be, for those who don't know, I mean, that could just be like a one bad 3-inning game that he just doesn't get through, but it could also be like a consistent stretch of things as well.
Yeah, I think his last 2 starts have been better, and he has looked more comfortable out there. And yesterday went 4 1/3, 3 runs, 3 hits, walked 5, and that's kind of been the thing. He's walked now, I think, 23 guys in about 29 innings. So that's kind of been the thing. I think he's got an electric arm, and everyone's very aware of that. And I think for a lot of young pitchers that we've watched, kind of come through here, it becomes about sort of trusting the stuff and being willing to throw it for strikes and saying, here, hit it if you can. And I think that's something he's getting more and more comfortable with. But there's no question the stuff he has, his arm is incredible. And that's from my very untrained eye, but also talking to some of the other guys down there, including Bats pitching coach Virgil Vasquez. His talent is incredible, but if he can just live in the strike zone a little bit more, I think that's going to be the key. And I think he's getting to that point. He's worked with Austin Wins, a catcher who has been around quite a bit, who's on this Bats team his last 2 times, and I think that's had a little bit of a calming influence on him too. So, yeah, it just – yesterday could have been a really good start. Pitch count got up there. That's always going to be a thing. So just limiting those walks, limiting the pitch count to stay in the game longer, I think is a big deal. And I think he's getting better and better with that as he makes each successive start.
Yeah, that's good. That's definitely good to hear. Carson Spires has been really good so far for Louisville this year. He's the guy who kind of had also had a little bit of a stretch with the team last year. With the big league club. What have you seen from him to kind of get Reds fans excited to see what he could potentially contribute to the team down the stretch this year?
Yeah, I mean, he's still obviously made his big league debut last year, and he's, this is his first real AAA stint. He was up briefly with the Bats in 2022 for maybe the last month or so of the season, only made 1 appearance with Louisville last year. So he's a little bit older, and he's just really polished. I think he's got a plan. He's very professional in the way he goes about everything, and that's what's so impressive. You kind of know what you're going to get each time out there, and so far he is according to Pat Kelly, the Bats manager, maybe sometimes had gotten into a thing where he wanted to strike everybody out, but for the most part this year that's not been the case. It's pitching to contact, staying in the strike zone, and getting guys to get themselves out. He's been the most consistent starting pitcher I think the Bats have had this year. Obviously, he made the 1 big league relief appearance this year, but he's just overall incredibly impressive. And I think something that is also really great for him and the role he may have with the Reds this year is that he is very familiar with coming out of the bullpen in addition to being a starter. He's done it a little bit as a pro, but also when he was at Clemson, he was exclusively a reliever. He never started a game in his collegiate career. And so he's really familiar with pitching in a relief role, which we obviously saw him do this year up there. So he can kind of do either thing and is comfortable doing it. And he's just been really impressive to see go about his work and to watch him on the mound with each start he's made.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else, any names jump out to you that kind of seeing what the Reds kind of their current state, guys who are playing so well at the Bats, anyone you could see maybe coming to the big league club and helping them out down through the season?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys playing well here right now. Rhys Hines is obviously a popular name among Reds fans. He had a 12-game hitting streak working until yesterday. It came to an end, but he's been swinging the bat really well. I think Blake Dunn, who battled an injury earlier in the year, is back healthy and is really impressive, especially watching him play outfield. But I think he's getting more and more comfortable at the plate. There are some other guys. Peyton Burdick's a Cincinnati area native that the Reds claimed off waivers from the Orioles. Been a big spark to the lineup. Has a lot of pop in his bat, and has helped this Louisville lineup out. He's on the 40-man. Levon Soto, who they also claimed off waivers from the Orioles. Again, just a guy with a lot of intangibles. You can just see he's willing to drop down a bunt to try to get on. He just seems like a guy that fits well with what the Reds have done the last couple of years. A great glove at shortstop, fun to watch him play there. He's gotten off to a really nice start offensively and can come up with some extra base hits when needed, but just willing to find ways on base. Edwin Rios, another left-handed hitting first baseman who's been with the Dodgers and the Cubs, was on the Bats injured list to start the year. He's been active for a little over a week, and he's already hit 4 or 5 home runs. So he's another guy. All 3 or 4 of those, the three guys I mentioned in Burdick, Rios, and Soto have all joined the Louisville lineup pretty recently and have all been an instant lift to the Louisville offense. So those are 3 guys I think that maybe at some point could help in Cincinnati, because they definitely have infused some energy and been a spark for the Bats lineup. But there's some others too. PJ Higgins has been here all year, incredibly versatile. Plays first, plays third, he catches. He's been really good at the plate. He's been one of the more consistent hitters the Bats have had from start to finish this year. Austin Wynns, who I mentioned as a catcher earlier, has been swinging the bat really well lately, has been on base a lot. So I do think there's a lot of guys, and a number of them veterans who have some big league time that are hitting the ball really well right now, that could end up making their way up there at some point and being able to fill whatever role the Reds need.
Yeah, it's definitely obvious. One like to hear nice thing about the depth. I don't know if you have to nod your head to agree to a degree or deny here, it's okay. But can you confirm with this progression that you guys have already put a locker aside for Rhett Lauder?
Yeah, I don't think it's to that point yet, but I don't think it would surprise anybody to see him pitching here before the season comes to an end. And he was obviously a guy that came out of Wake Forest pretty polished, according to everyone that watched him pitch and everyone that was talking about that draft pick. So I said all offseason that I thought there was a good chance he could make his big league debut at some point this year. I mean, the pitching's been so good up there. I don't know if that's still the case.
True.
Because, you got to have a spot, but I definitely think we'll see him in Louisville at some point this year, with just the way things have gone, and a quick promotion to Chattanooga. And since he's older and been around a little bit through time at Wake Forest, I think traditionally those guys seem to progress fairly quickly through the system, and I would not be surprised to see him here at some point this year.
That Dragons team's been super fun, and obviously a lot of guys keep their eyes on. Cam Collier obviously is a guy everyone's really excited about. Also had a really big hit streak and has already matched his homer total from Daytona last year. Is there any guy in particular that, not just baseball for sure, but like any guy you're like really excited about could see coming to Louisville? Obviously that has to do with a lot of like this guy gets promoted or this guy's injured and things like that. But anyone you're seeing in the Chattanooga department besides Rhett Lauder that you're kind of excited to see what they can do with Louisville?
Yeah, I honestly stay pretty focused on our squad just because, sure. And especially at AAA, there's so many things that can happen. For instance, Levon Soto and Peyton Burdick, who I mentioned, were not on anybody's radar in the Red system, just a few weeks ago, and now they're key parts of the lineup here in Louisville and are both on the Reds 40-man roster. So especially at this level, you just never know who could end up being here in the next week or two. There's so many roster moves that get made. And so Yeah, I don't know. I do think, from a pitching standpoint, Chase Petty was a big name that people, you know, are looking forward to seeing here. A lot of talk about whether he would be here this season, maybe to start the year or whatever, and obviously started there, and probably somebody that could very well pitch with Louisville before the season comes to an end. So I definitely think that's a name. But we have a number of guys here that I think are just getting, like Christian Roa was on the injured list to start the year, has only made a couple of appearances. So getting him back into the groove that he can sort of get into is a big deal. A guy like Rios, who was on the injured list to start the year, seeing what he can do as he is now healthy. Jacob Hurtubise was hurt the first weekend of the season for the Bats, and I sounds like progressing well. Hopefully in Arizona, and maybe in the not too distant future, we'll be back with this Louisville team. Guys like that. Excited to see them because we haven't gotten to see a lot of them because of injuries. So as much as anything, excited for those types of guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my last question before we get out of here. Obviously, I think when I ask you this, I'm sure there's no shock to you in seeing how successful Elly De La Cruz has been at the big league level this year. So my question is more actually, how much fun was it? I know it was only a short time you got to call his at bats in his games, but how much fun is it on a day-to-day basis when you get to commentate on Elly De La Cruz?
It was a lot of fun. That whole group last year was something special that I don't think many had seen, certainly around here with the Bats, having guys like Matt McClain and Elly De La Cruz and Christian Encarnacion Strand all on the same team and all swinging it really well and kind of in a groove at the same time. Probably the best, honestly, AAA team I've ever watched. And it was the Bats for that month and a half and really throughout the year, a lot of it last year, because you had other guys up and down the lineup, a Chucky Robinson, a Matt Reynolds, a TJ Hopkins, like everybody, Nick Martini, everybody was swinging it well. But Elly in particular, everyone has seen it since he's been in the big leagues, but his attitude and his just, I don't know, there's an energy about him. He's always smiling, and I think it's infectious. And I think that's one of the positive things, even as this team has undergone a rough stretch lately. I think Elly has a way of helping keep everybody positive. We saw that in the clubhouse here last year. Number one prospect, these hotshot guys. There's always typically some veterans at the AAA level that maybe are like, come on, or, maybe resent that guy. But no one disliked Elly. Like, everyone liked him. He was just so fun to watch, but also just such a positive, smiling guy in the clubhouse, and the way he went about his business every day. That's what was really cool to see, is that typically, you have a top prospect might rub some people the wrong way, but didn't really see that with Elly at all. And that's what made, I think, a lot of people pretty sure that he was going to be the real deal. Just everything all encompassing. His hard work, he was out there on the field every day, putting in the time. And then obviously his ability and stuff that you can't teach is amazing. But you package it all together and you get what he is, and it's definitely special. And it was special to see him here for a month and a half or whatever it was last year.
I got to piggyback this last one because this is just really important. Obviously, you got extended time with Joey Votto last year. Obviously, from his time down there rehabbing. Obviously, not with the organization anymore. That's an argument for another day. But your time with him last year, I'm sure, as a baseball fan, was probably a blast, right?
Oh, cool. Very cool. He actually, the last 3 or 4 years, ended up with time here. So, I mean, unfortunately for him, sort of got to be back here quite a bit. But I think especially last year, he really embraced it. He knew, that it was going to be a pretty long process last year, I think, to getting back to where he wanted to be health-wise. And so I think he really did embrace being here and sort of mentoring some guys, had a lot of long conversations, which you could watch on the field with Christian, Encarnacion Strand, a couple of guys. It was kind of cool. Votto, the first baseman of, at that time, the present, moving into the back part of his career clearly, and Christian on his way up, and those guys talking to each other. And I know Joey was imparting a lot of knowledge there. But just to watch him go about his work, it's amazing. He's got a routine, and he's going to put in the time. And that was something that was really fun as much as anything. And I think he really did a great job of just being another guy here. And I think that's a part of it that he embraced last year, is that he was just here, and it wasn't like, he'd been around and is possibly a Hall of Famer or any of that. He was just here as a bat and trying to get all the way healthy, and really embrace being one of the guys in the clubhouse for the pretty extended time he was here. And that's what was really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nick, thank you so much for giving us a half hour of your time. I know you're a busy man, so we definitely would appreciate it. But before we get out of here for the day, if people want to kind of keep up with anything you're on the socials, is there any way people can get in contact with you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. That's really the only social media I'm on. It's at Nick Curran 35 or X or whatever it's called now. But the Bats on Twitter, obviously, as well, can keep up with us, and can stream the games every night. We're on 96.1, the Big X here locally in Louisville, but you can stream those, go into the Bats website, and if you ever want to tune in to see what's possibly on the way and what is here that could help that Reds team, we're there for each game.
Awesome. Well, I would definitely appreciate it. So we're going to go on this week's episode of The Riverfront, the world's most dangerous podcast. So make sure you tell your friends, of course, so you can check us out, whether it's on YouTube, at Riverfront Cincy, on all those socials. And, of course, you should become a family member at patreon.com/RiverfrontCincy. Be sure, as always, to check out Welcome to the Jungle, our Cincinnati Bengals podcast with Joe and Parker, our Late Night Reds with myself and Ben Brown on Sunday nights, our podcast on Monday morning. So shout out to Adam Dunn. Shout out to Lisa Alberto Bonilla, Wayne Krzyzewski, and Eli Cash. For Nick Curran and Reaver San Martin, this is Tim Daniel saying, so long, Cincinnati.